Hello and welcome back to my channel, Home to Inspire DIY and Decor. This is Gwen. Today I will be featuring 2 DIYs for Easter and spring. Hope you enjoy. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's do this. So first I will be using one of these DollarTree bunny cutouts. And just taking some of my Waverly antique wax, I just brush on and then wipe off with a baby wipe. I did this to the entire piece, and I wanted this to be the basis of the background color, but I will be covering this up with some white chalk paint, and I just wanted some of this dark wax to come through once I distress it. Next, I'll be using Folkart's Antique Rose color and just painting that over the tail just to add some contrast. Next, I'm using Waverly's chalk paint in the color Snow White and just dry brushing that over the entire piece except for the tail. And I'm just using one of DollarTree's chip brushes, and I'm not worried about doing full coverage. I just want this to be a dry brush because essentially I will be removing most of that white paint. Then using one of DollarTree's spackling knife, I gently remove some of the white chalk paint, just rubbing that up against the wood. And this was before the chalk paint had the ability to completely dry. It was a little bit damp. But I'm basically removing most of that white chalk paint, just leaving a little bit here and there. I did want a little contrast of the white against that antique wax, and I really liked the finished look when this was all done. It does give it more of a rustic feel. So if this isn't your cup of tea, you can definitely leave it a solid color, but this is my personal preference. Next up, taking more of that antique rose color, I just use a sponge dauber, also from the Dollar Tree, and just sponge that on to the welcome spring galvanized metal signs, and just speeding up that drying process using my heat gun. I did do several coats of this since it is hard to paint over metal. It has a tendency to want to chip off. And actually, when all of that was said and done, it did chip off a little bit, but ultimately it did give it a little character. So I wasn't too worried about it having bits of the paint come off. Next, I took some of the Waverly wax and just using my fingers, just dabbing it into the paint and just outlining the little paws as well as the whole entire piece just to give it a little dimension and giving it a little bit of an accent to this piece. I used my wipe just to help the wax spread out a little bit more and lighten up the color. And I really like the dimension that this adds to the piece. But you can leave this part out if this isn't something that you want to add to your piece, but I think it definitely makes it stand out a little bit more. So I did the same thing with the tail, and it just gives it that really nice distressed finish. Using more of that antique wax, I did the same to the welcome spring sign as well, just to make it more cohesive. And again, adding a little bit more of that rusticness that I really enjoy. So you can definitely customize this to your liking. You can add more if you really like that dark, rustic, distressed look, or you can add less. Or you can totally leave it out completely. This is your project, and I'm just here for the inspo, so do what you want to your own DIYs. I just want to give some ideas of how you can use some of these supplies that you can find from Dollar Tree to make your own custom Easter or spring decor. Next, I am using some Tite Bond glue and a little bit of hot glue just for that instant hold. So hot glue doesn't really adhere well to metal. So it is important to use more of a permanent adhesive, such as Tite Bond or a wood glue or crazy glue, but I just use the hot glue just for instant hold, so it keeps the sign or the wording in place while the permanent adhesive does its job. So then you'll want to add some pressure just to make sure you have good adhesion to the wood. And I do apologize for this being a little out of frame. I'm getting used to the angles with my new tripod, so I do apologize if you are not able to see the entire piece as I'm working towards the bottom. And since I am creating some sort of a wall pocket or a floral planter, I decided to add some fabric to the back of this wood cutout. I essentially needed to create some sort of pocket to hold the florals that I will be adding to this project. This fabric came from Hobby Lobby. It was just a piece of remnant that I had left over from my previous DIY. So I'm just creating a pocket, just eyeballing it, and there really isn't a rhyme or reason to how I made this. I was just sort of going with the flow. I figured I would need to just, in order to make a clean seam, I just folded the edges inward, hot glued it into place, and then glued that over the back side of that bunny cutout. Now, learn from my mistake. I did not give myself allowance in order to be able to add florals to this, because I did glue this a little too tightly, not taking into consideration that I needed space to add my florals into. So eventually I did have to undo the glue and clean up my mess and then kind of start a little bit from scratch. I just had to remove one side and give it a little bit more of an adjustment. An allowance, if you will, just so I had space to add my florals into it. Next, I took some pool noodle, which I will be using as my floral foam. And this worked out well. I just cut it in half and just stuffed it into the fabric, just like that. Then taking some florals of my choice, these came from Dollar Tree, just went ahead and separated the pieces, just cutting them apart. And I like to do this as opposed to putting them in as a whole bunch or bouquet, because it gives you the freedom to spread them out and to create more of an even or a pretty look, because then you're able to spread out your flowers and arrange them in a better way, as opposed to putting them into just one big bunch. you have no control over how they will look. But when you separate your pieces, you're able to freely spread them out and you know, integrate different types of florals in between each piece so that it gives you a neater and pretty overall appearance, at least in my opinion. So here I'm taking some of these ferns that came from Dollar Tree as well, cut them up and use them as the backdrop of this floral arrangement, just sticking them into the pool noodle. Now, if you feel like you need more support, you can definitely use some hot glue to the ends of your floral pieces and insert them into your foam as needed. But in this case, I really didn't find that was necessary, so I just went ahead and just kept piercing them into the pool noodle, arranging them into a fashion that was pleasing to my eyes. And you'll want to continue this until you have the fullness and the appearance that you like. So I like that the ferns give it height. And then you have the pink flowers in the front, just sort of peeking out from behind the rabbit's bottom, which I think is super cute. Just give it a good fluff and arrange your pieces and rearrange them as needed until you are content with the look of your project. Now taking another piece of that pool noodle that I cut, I went ahead and just stuffed that in just to give this a more polished and finished look and to add a little bit more fullness to the back so that it doesn't dip in. It also allows me to have the opportunity to glue that open seam down and just giving it more of a clean finish. So you just want to take more hot glue, just making sure to secure all the pieces down into place. And the next thing I wanted to do was to cover up those two little holes where the original string came from. So I did add some hot glue into there. And then next I needed to create a hanger. So I took one of these burlap ribbons from Dollar Tree and just cut it down to size, hot gluing them into the back to create this hanger. I wanted to add a ribbon of some sort, so I decided to use this leftover raffia ribbon from a different DIY and just made that simple bow, just adjusting the length that I wanted it to be and hot gluing that into place. I did have to cut the tails off just a little so that it wasn't blocking the wording. The next thing I did was just to add some Waverly wax over the holes where I had painted it white, just to blend it a little bit more with the rest of the project. And this is it for this first project. I believe it came out super adorable. It's a precious little wall decor. You can hang it on your front door or in a gallery wall or anywhere that you want to add a little bit of a spring or Easter touch. And I hope you guys enjoy this DIY. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this DIY. I think it came out super precious. I really love the color combination and just the overall look. Let me know if you'll be giving this a try. It was super easy, affordable, and simple to make. And now on to project number 2. These are some of the supplies I will be using. These are just some florals from the Dollar Tree. That bunny is from the Dollar Tree, as well as the carrots. The ribbons from 99-cent store. Those wood pieces are from the Dollar Tree. I will be using Folkart's antique rose, as well as this white color by Waverly and this thrifted wall basket. So first off, I will be taking that picket fence and painting it in the color Snow White by Waverly. Next, I'll be painting that little wording hop sign in that antique rose color. And I really love this color. It's more of a muted pink. It's not too bright or anything like that. So I think it has a nice contrast to that white picket fence. And this basket, as I mentioned, is thrifted. So I removed that raffia ribbon. And if you recognize that ribbon at all, it was used in the first DIY. So never throw away your little remnants from other projects, because you can always find a use for it for other things. So I added a piece of floral foam as well as a piece of wood. It's a wood box that came from Dollar Tree. I just used it inside the basket to help elevate the bunny that I will be adding to this project. So taking some florals from the Dollar Tree and adding some greenery, like that faux spider plant, and some leaves, I just inserted it into the floral foam, arranging it until I was happy with the way it looked. I also used some wisteria in that lavender or purple color, and it added a nice contrast to the greens and the yellows that's in this floral arrangement. Again, I apologize for the angles. You are not able to see exactly how I'm placing these leaves, but you will see in the finished product or project. But I'm basically adding them here and there towards the outside of this arrangement, so that they kind of drape and fall to the sides, just adding some interest to this arrangement so everything is not just standing upright. And when I'm doing my floral arrangements, I really don't have any rhyme or reason to it. I just keep playing with it until I'm happy with how everything looks. Then I added that little cute bunny from Dollar Tree, and I placed it on top of that wood box that I inserted into the basket. This allows the bunny to stick out a little bit more, be elevated, and not be sunken into this basket, and you can actually see it a little bit better. Then I just sort of place more wisteria around the bunny, like it's growing out around it. I think it's super cute. Then it was time to glue the word down to the picket fence, and I just did that using some hot glue. And this was going to be placed opposite the bunny, just adding some balance to this piece. And again, more of that contrast, bringing that white and pink to the right side of this wall decor. And I think it gave it just the right touch that it needed to make this piece more balanced. I also took some carrots, those came from the 99-cent store, and just placed 3 just scattered throughout. Using some of this cute carrot ribbon, also from the 99-cent store, I just made a stacked ribbon, basically folding the 2 edges to the middle and gluing it into place. And I did that twice, just making sure that you have 2 different size or lengths of ribbon so that they are layered. And then to create the tail, I just took a longer piece of ribbon and just folded that over each other. And that's going to be glued behind those two initial ribbons that were formed. I just use a piece of jute string to tie those two layers to each other. And then I use hot glue to glue the tail to the two pieces. I'm sorry if this doesn't make any sense or if this is confusing and you're not getting a good view of how I'm making this. I do apologize for the angles. Basically, that's how it looks at the back side, and just using hot glue. Nothing fancy, nothing formal. This isn't like an ideal bow tutorial by any means. It's just the way that I found it easier to create this bow. Then this is a wired ribbon, so I was able to fluff this out just a bit. And then I ended up gluing that into place with some hot glue. And you're not able to see it here, but the tails are fairly long, but I did want it to have more of a rippled effect, if you will. So I did glue the tails down onto the basket in several places, just giving it more of a rippled look. Again, this will be more visible in the final reveal. So here you'll see I'm just fussing with the placement of the carrots. I just wanted to make sure everything was balanced. And that does it for this DIY. I am super happy with the way it came out. All the colors blend well with each other, and it's just such a cute little decor piece. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment down below. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, share my videos, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Take care.